185,000 soldiers could not defeat this angel. This is one of the greatest stories in the Bible. The Bible speaks of God's intervention in the affairs of his people, and the story of Hezekiah and his numerous enemies is one of the greatest examples of this divine intervention. Hezekiah was a man in stark contrast to his terrible father, Ahaz. During his 29-year reign, he was granted the rare honor of doing what was right in the eyes of the Lord, just as his ancestor David had done. In the 3rd year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, king of Judah, began to reign. He was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem for 29 years. The name of his mother was Abi, daughter of Zechariah. Hezekiah did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, according to all the things his ancestor David had done. 2 Kings 18 verses 1-3. Hezekiah was one of the few kings who supported the elevated places of worship. He also cut down the Asherah poles and destroyed the bronze serpent that Moses had created centuries earlier. This bronze serpent, known as Nehushtan, which means bronze image, had become an object of worship for the Israelites. In the book of Numbers, 21:8-9, it is mentioned that the Lord said to Moses, "Make a fiery serpent and set it on a pole, and it shall come to pass that everyone who is bitten, when he looks at it, shall live." Moses made a bronze serpent and put it on a pole, and it happened that when a serpent bit someone, if that person looked at the bronze serpent, they would live. It is unfortunate that this object, which God used to deliver the people, later became a source of idolatry. For these and other reasons, Hezekiah is considered a king who stood out above the other kings in his adherence to God's commandments. 2 Kings 18 verses 4-5. He removed the high places, broke the sacred stones, cut down the Asherah poles, and smashed the bronze serpent that Moses had made. For up to that time, the Israelites had been burning incense to it. Hezekiah trusted in the Lord, the God of Israel. There was no one like him among all the kings of Judah, either before him or after him. After reading about the unfaithfulness and atrocious acts of so many kings of Israel and Judah, King Hezekiah was a breath of fresh air. His reign was a testament to his faithfulness to God's commandments. He prospered wherever he went because the Lord was with him. 2 Kings 18 verses 6-7. Because he was faithful to the Lord and did not turn away from him but kept the commandments that the Lord had given to Moses, the Lord was with him. He succeeded in everything he undertook. He rebelled against the king of Assyria and did not serve him anymore. Furthermore, he defeated the Philistines as far as Gaza and its borders, from watchtower to fortified city. In the 4th year of King Hezekiah, which was the 7th year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, marched against Samaria and laid siege to it. They took it after 3 years. That is, Samaria was captured in the 6th year of Hezekiah, which was the 9th year of Hoshea, king of Israel. The king of Assyria deported the Israelites to Assyria and settled them in Hala, in Gozan on the Habor River, and in the towns of the Medes, because they had not obeyed the voice of the Lord their God but had broken his covenant. They neither listened to nor carried out all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, had commanded. 2 Kings 18 verses 9-12. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah's reign, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, attacked all the fortified cities of Judah and captured them. So Hezekiah, king of Judah, sent a message to the king of Assyria at Lachish, "I have done wrong. Withdraw from me, and I will pay whatever you demand of me." The king of Assyria exacted from Hezekiah, king of Judah, 300 talents of silver and 30 talents of gold. So Hezekiah gave him all the silver that was found in the temple of the Lord and in the treasuries of the royal palace. At that time, Hezekiah stripped off the gold with which he had covered the doors and doorposts of the temple of the Lord and gave it to the king of Assyria. 2 Kings 18 verses 13-16. The successor of Shalmaneser, the conqueror of Israel, was the Assyrian king against whom Hezekiah would have to fight. Unfortunately for Judah, things did not go as planned. Sennacherib attacked and conquered all the fortified cities of Judah, leaving only Jerusalem. It was at this moment that Hezekiah might have concluded that he had miscalculated the situation. He had previously admitted to Sennacherib that he had acted wrongly and offered a ransom to prevent his people from suffering the same fate as Israel. The demand was enormous, and Hezekiah sent all the silver and gold he could find, even stripping gold from the temple. However, things were about to get worse. God surrounded the Assyrians around Jerusalem to test Hezekiah's faith and demonstrate his own power to his people. Sennacherib did not believe that Hezekiah's ransom was sufficient and was looking for a reason to attack Jerusalem anyway. The Assyrian king sent a delegation and a massive army to Jerusalem to demand the city's surrender. The Rabshakeh, the spokesman for the king of Assyria, stood and called out in Hebrew, making sure that everyone in Jerusalem could understand him. He said, "Tell Hezekiah, this is what the great king, the king of Assyria, says. On what are you basing this confidence of yours? You say you have counsel and might for war, but you speak only empty words. On whom are you depending that you rebel against me? Look, now you are depending on Egypt, that splintered reed of a staff, which pierces a man's hand and wounds him if he leans on it. Such is Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to all who depend on him. But if you say to me, we trust in the Lord our God, isn't he the one whose high places and altars Hezekiah removed, saying to Judah and Jerusalem, you must worship before this altar in Jerusalem? 2 Kings 18 verses 19 to 22. The Rabshakeh continued, Now then, make a bargain with my master, the king of Assyria. I will give you 2,000 horses, if you can put riders on them. How then can you repulse one officer of the least of my master's servants, even though you are depending on Egypt for chariots and horsemen? Furthermore, have I come to attack and destroy this place without the Lord? The Lord himself told me to march against this country and destroy it. 2 Kings 18 verses 23 to 25. The royal spokesman of Sennacherib laid out what he believed to be the facts to make Hezekiah and his people open their gates and surrender. First, Egypt was a useless ally that would not deliver them, which was true. Secondly, he was sure that the people of Judah had angered their God by destroying the places of worship, namely the high places and forbidden altars that Hezekiah had demolished. Of course, Hezekiah was right to demolish them. However, even the followers of the king probably questioned the king's actions in light of what was happening. Thirdly, the spokesman of Sennacherib reminded them that Judah's army was too weak to repel the Assyrian army. Given Hezekiah's effort to bribe Assyria, this was probably true as well. Lastly, he claimed that the Lord himself had told him to attack and destroy the land, essentially saying, "Hey, your God is on my side." This was a lie, but to the demoralized inhabitants of Jerusalem, it might have seemed he was right. After all, their northern neighbors had fallen to Assyria, and those same cruel conquerors were now at their gates. Then Eliakim son of Hilkiah, Shebna, and Joah said to the Rabshakeh, "Please speak to your servants in Aramaic, for we understand it. Do not speak to us in Hebrew in the hearing of the people on the wall." But the Rabshakeh said, "Has my master sent me only to your master and to you, and not also to the men sitting on the wall, who like you will have to eat their own excrement and drink their own urine?" Then the Rabshakeh stood and called out in Hebrew, "Hear the word of the great king, the king of Assyria. This is what the king says. Do not let Hezekiah deceive you. He cannot deliver you from my hand. Do not let Hezekiah persuade you to trust in the Lord when he says, 'The Lord will surely deliver us. This city will not be given into the hand of the king of Assyria.'" 2 Kings 18 verses 26 to 30. The request of the three men that the negotiations be conducted in Aramaic rather than Hebrew was intended to protect the listeners on the wall from the threats. However, the Assyrian spokesman did not care. He wanted everyone to fear the ultimatum of his king. He spoke to the people in Hebrew in the most repulsive manner imaginable. He then warned the people not to listen to Hezekiah's promises that the Lord would deliver them, offering instead peace and prosperity if they surrendered. This shows the cruelty of the Assyrian Empire. By intimidating Hezekiah's representatives and seeking to demoralize the population, Sennacherib's spokesman tried to turn the people against their king. The Rabshakeh continued, "Do not listen to Hezekiah. This is what the king of Assyria says. Make peace with me and come out to me. Then every one of you will eat from his own vine and fig tree and drink water from his own cistern, until I come and take you to a land like your own, a land of grain and new wine, a land of bread and vineyards, a land of olive trees and honey. Choose life and not death. Do not listen to Hezekiah, for he is misleading you when he says, 'The Lord will deliver us.' Has the God of any nation ever delivered his land from the hand of the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim, Hena, and Ivah? Have they rescued Samaria from my hand? Who of all the gods of these countries have been able to save their lands from me? How then can the Lord deliver Jerusalem from my hand?" 2 Kings 18 verses 31 to 35. The Rabshakeh's offer sounded like the offer of a salesman, too good to be true. He promised that they would have peace, food, and water. The people of Judah would live in peace until they were exiled to another land. He tried to convince them that surrender was their best option. He even tried to show that no other gods had saved their lands from Assyria. His message was clear: don't trust Hezekiah, and don't trust in the Lord. However, the people remained silent as Hezekiah had commanded them. They did not answer him because the king had told them, "Do not answer him." Then Eliakim son of Hilkiah, the palace administrator, Shebna the secretary, and Joah son of Asaph, the recorder, went to Hezekiah with their clothes torn and told him what the Rabshakeh had said. 2 Kings 18 verses 36 to 37. When King Hezekiah heard this, he tore his clothes and put on sackcloth and went into the house of the Lord. He sent Eliakim, the palace administrator, Shebna the secretary, and the leading priests, all wearing sackcloth, to the prophet Isaiah son of Amoz. They told him, "This is what Hezekiah says. This day is a day of distress and rebuke and disgrace, as when children come to the point of birth and there is no strength to deliver them. It may be that the Lord your God will hear the words of the Rabshakeh, whom his master, the king of Assyria, has sent to ridicule the living God, and that he will rebuke him for the words the Lord your God has heard. Therefore pray for the remnant that still survives." 2 Kings 19 verses 1 to 4. When King Hezekiah heard the report of his officials, he responded by tearing his clothes and putting on sackcloth. This was a sign of mourning and humility before God. He went into the house of the Lord and sent his officials to the prophet Isaiah to seek God's help. The king's message to Isaiah was a plea for divine intervention. Hezekiah hoped that the Lord would hear the insults of the Assyrian spokesman and rebuke him. He also asked Isaiah to pray for the remnant of the people who still survived. Isaiah's response was a message of hope and assurance from God. Isaiah said to them, "Tell your master, this is what the Lord says. Do not be afraid of what you have heard, those words with which the underlings of the king of Assyria have blasphemed me. Listen, when he hears a certain report, I will make him want to return to his own country, and there I will have him cut down with the sword." 2 Kings 19 verses 5 to 7. The Lord, through Isaiah, assured Hezekiah that he should not be afraid of the blasphemous words of the Assyrian spokesman. God promised that he would cause Sennacherib to hear a report that would make him return to his own land, and there he would be killed. Sennacherib's withdrawal from Jerusalem to fight against the king of Cush did not mean he had forgotten about Jerusalem. Before leaving, he sent a message to Hezekiah, repeating his threats. Sennacherib sent messengers to Hezekiah with this message: "Say to Hezekiah king of Judah, do not let the God you depend on deceive you when he says, 'Jerusalem will not be handed over to the king of Assyria.' Surely you have heard what the kings of Assyria have done to all the countries, destroying them completely. And will you be delivered? Did the gods of the nations that were destroyed by my forefathers deliver them, the gods of Gozan, Haran, Rezeph, and the people of Eden who were in Tel Assar? Where is the king of Hamath, the king of Arpad? the king of the city of Sepharvaim, or of Hena or Iva. 2 Kings 19 verses 10 to 13. Sennacherib's message was a reminder of the Assyrian Empire's military successes. He wanted to intimidate Hezekiah and the people of Jerusalem by recounting the conquests of his predecessors and the failure of other gods to protect their people. He questioned the ability of the Lord to deliver Jerusalem, just as the other gods had failed. When Hezekiah received the letter from the messengers and read it, he went up to the house of the Lord and spread it out before the Lord. And Hezekiah prayed to the Lord, "Lord, the God of Israel, enthroned between the cherubim, you alone are God over all the kingdoms of the earth. You have made heaven and earth. Give ear, Lord, and hear. Open your eyes, Lord, and see. Listen to the words Sennacherib has sent to ridicule the living God. It is true, Lord, that the Assyrian kings have laid waste these nations and their lands. They have thrown their gods into the fire and destroyed them, for they were not gods but only wood and stone, fashioned by human hands. Now, Lord our God, deliver us from his hand, so that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that you alone, Lord our God." 2 Kings 19 verses 14 to 19. Hezekiah's prayer was a powerful plea for God's intervention. He acknowledged the Lord as the sovereign creator of heaven and earth and appealed to God's glory and reputation. Hezekiah reminded God that the Assyrians had insulted him and asked for deliverance so that all the kingdoms of the earth would know that the Lord alone is God. God responded through Isaiah, sending a message to Hezekiah that reassured him of his protection. Isaiah said to Hezekiah, "This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says, I have heard your prayer concerning Sennacherib king of Assyria. This is the word that the Lord has spoken against him. The virgin daughter Zion despises you and mocks you. Daughter Jerusalem tosses her head as you flee. Who is it you have ridiculed and blasphemed? Against whom have you raised your voice and lifted your eyes in pride? Against the Holy One of Israel. By your messengers you have ridiculed the Lord. And you have said, with my many chariots I have ascended the heights of the mountains, the utmost heights of Lebanon. I have cut down its tallest cedars, the choicest of its junipers. I have reached its remotest parts, the finest of its forests. I have dug wells in foreign lands and drunk the water there. With the soles of my feet I have dried up all the streams of Egypt. Have you not heard? Long ago I ordained it. In days of old I planned it. Now I have brought it to pass that you have turned fortified cities into piles of stone. Their people, drained of power, are dismayed and put to shame. They are like plants in the field, like tender green shoots, like grass sprouting on the roof, scorched before it grows up. But I know where you are and when you come and go and how you rage against me. Because you rage against me and because your insolence has reached my ears, I will put my hook in your nose and my bit in your mouth, and I will make you return by the way you came. 2 Kings 19 verses 20 to 28. God's message through Isaiah declared that he had heard Hezekiah's prayer and had taken notice of Sennacherib's arrogance. The Lord affirmed his sovereignty and control over all events. He assured Hezekiah that Sennacherib's pride and blasphemy would not go unpunished. The Lord declared that he would humble Sennacherib and force him to retreat to his own land. That night, the angel of the Lord went out and put to death 185,000 in the Assyrian camp. When the people got up the next morning, there were all the dead bodies. So Sennacherib king of Assyria broke camp and withdrew. He returned to Nineveh and stayed there. One day, while he was worshipping in the temple of his god Nisroch, his sons Adramelech and Sharezer killed him with the sword, and they escaped to the land of Ararat. And Esarhaddon his son succeeded him as king. 2 Kings 19 verses 35 to 37. The Lord's deliverance came in the form of a miraculous intervention. The angel of the Lord struck down 185,000 Assyrian soldiers in one night, causing Sennacherib to retreat and return to Nineveh. Eventually, Sennacherib met his end in the temple of his god, killed by his own sons. This story highlights the power of faith and the might of God. Despite overwhelming odds, Hezekiah's trust in the Lord brought about a miraculous deliverance for Jerusalem. The destruction of the Assyrian army by a single angel demonstrates the sovereignty and power of God over even the greatest of earthly powers. This event serves as a powerful reminder of God's ability to protect and deliver his people in times of dire need.